Every voice has a unique energy signature. Like, you can feel that I'm a real human being with a real beating heart. And people want to connect with you as a real human being with a real beating heart. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Welcome back to the Better Than Rich Show. I'm your host today, Mike Abramowitz, and I've been waiting to have this guy on the show. You've heard me talk about him. We were like 250 episodes in. I've mentioned his name several times. I mentioned his book because the Ask method that he wrote years and years ago got me very much into the space and into the digital realm. And then his quiz funnels just blew my mind. Ryan Levesque, thank you so much for being here, brother. So excited to have you, man.
Mike, it's awesome to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time.
Well, I know we've had some casual combos at Firmer Dad's retreats, and just such a chill dude. And I've been watching you in the digital realm, like I mentioned, for years. And then just to be able to like have a fireside chat with you and just connect and chat and talk kids. And I know you have your two boys and, moved up to Vermont, and, just the whole story is just like fantastic. And I wanted, for people that don't necessarily know the stage or season you're at, there's some people who've been following you and your journey with the Ask method, and then Choose and the quiz funnels and the multiple 8 figures and 9 figures and all those accolades are just like amazing. But then you're like, you know what? I'm going to just like go live farm life on this, like, I don't know what 50 acre land or whatever, and just like raise cattle and crops and stuff, and like focus on human connection. And I want to start there. And then I want to hear what you have to say as to why you made the pivot. And then I also want to have you talk about this email that you just sent that hit my inbox about AI, on how it makes sense to use AI, but it also doesn't make sense to use it in a way that many people think to use it. So I just want to kind of get some of your thoughts on that as we kind of enter into this conversation.
Wow. Well, it's a great opening question. Crack it wide open. A lot to cover there. I'll try to give the Cliff Notes version, and then we can use that as a jumping off point. So about almost 20 years ago now, I started a company, and it became the Ask Method Company, a 7-time Inc. 5000 fastest growing company. And for the better part of a decade, I was in kind of empire building mode, an empire season of life. And for anyone not familiar, we built a consulting and training company and then a software company. So it was 2 different businesses that were very much sister companies with one another. And then in 2021, we decided to take the collective businesses to market to actually sell the company, received multiple offers, basically got down to the 1 yard line with a $70 million offer, all cash offer to buy both businesses with private equity. And after a year of going through a process, $1 million spent in diligence on the part of the buyer, at the literally 1 yard line, the deal fell apart. And it fell apart for a number of reasons. Most notably, our timeline spilled into 2022. And this was when Russia invaded the Ukraine and crypto markets crashed, capital markets crashed. So the M&A market in 2022 effectively dried up. There's a lot of fear that there was going to be, maybe World War III, Russia, who knows what Russia was going to do. And so there are these huge macroeconomic headwinds, and basically all M&A activity, at least in our space, basically ended. And for me, like, that was not how the story was supposed to end. And this is kind of the segue to answer your question. This is not how the story was supposed to end. I thought, okay, I'm going to walk away in the sunset, happily ever after, the end. And because of that outcome, it led me to really question a lot of things and really ask myself a series of deep questions that led me to the observations and the realizations of where we are right now. In short, I decided to take a little bit of time off from work. I asked myself, do I want to spend the next decade of my life basically in empire building mode to try to, get this business to the next economic cycle and sell at that time? And you brought it up. I've got 2 boys that are, who are growing up faster than I can, even fathom right now. And I just knew that I didn't want to let this window of my life slip through my fingers. So I took a little bit of time off. When my boys were at summer camp over the summer, I decided to take some time off, and I traveled to a farm in rural Vermont, in the Mad River Valley of Vermont. And I lived in a tent for part of a summer, living and working on this farm. And when I was there, I was going through this period of deep reflection and deep questioning. I did a lot of reading. I read a number of books, including The Second Mountain by David Brooks. Great book, by the way. And it led me to kind of realize that I don't want to spend the second half of my life doing the same thing that I was doing the first half of my life. So while I was there, my wife and I had been contemplating a life move, and I with one bar of service on my phone, I reached out to her. I said, "Hey, let's do it. Let's put the house on the market." We were living in Austin, Texas at the time. And later that day, I get a text message back. My wife says, "All right, house is sold, full price, all cash offer, 14-day close. Get your butt back to Texas from Vermont." So I hop on an airplane, get back to Vermont. We put everything we own into storage, sell one of our cars, load the suitcases on the back of the truck, load up the kids and the dog, and we road trip from Texas to Vermont with nothing but a vision and a dream of starting our own farm together as a family. And that's led us to this moment in time right now.
And before we go to the next part of that, I just want to say I watched Tom Green on like his like documentary of going to the farm, and I watched it and I thought of you. it's it's just
I'll take that as a compliment. Tom Green is a pretty funny.
but that's what he did. He legit left LA and went back on the farm, and he's like, it's all behind the scenes. It's really cool of like just document. But I think of you because you shared for Front Row Dads, like a lot of the behind the scenes, like your cows that you name, and like, you know, your spiritual connection with each of the animals and the chickens, the eggs, and even in your emails. And by the way, listener, you got to go opt in to the the Digital Contrarian. Is that what it's called? The newsletter. I mean, you got it. It's so good. I love reading them. I think it's just raw. It's real. It's human. It's personal, and it's inspiring, dude. Because how old were your boys when you took this trip, when you made the move?
When we made the move, my youngest just turned 11 this past weekend, and it was 3 years ago. So he would have been 7 going on 8 when we made the move. So he was probably 8 years old. And then my oldest was 10. So they were 8 and 10 when we made the move. And now they're, 11 and 13. And it just goes by so incredibly fast.
All right. Before we pivot into the whole AI piece that I want, just speak to this guy for a moment, because I share on the show, reason why I speak to the trades and the homeowner, like the home service guys. My dad owns a plumbing business. He's 84. He still works 6 days a week. He still grinds. He's running the business the exact same way today that he did 40 years ago when I was a kid. So he worked so much my whole life. So I love the ambition. I love his drive and his fun, his work ethic and all that. He still works out. He still goes dancing. He still digs ditches. He's so healthy. He's 84, but he's only met my 5-year-old like 5 times. You know, like my daughter's going to be 2. I think he's met her once, maybe twice. So it's like, there's this piece of this guy who just grinds to make something for his family, but also kind of misses a lot of those special magic moments with the family. And it's like kind of a little bit of there's a unique twist there that you realized probably in your 40s. Like, I assume you're in your 40s, right? Like you made this pivot. How did you make that pivot of like, I only got 18 summers and the kids are already like 7 and 10. What could you say to that guy or that woman that's here right now that maybe is tuning in, to have them say, these are like, it's pretty important, like you, or at least it's important to you? What would you say to that?
So many ways to answer that question. So the first thing that I'll say is there's a question that whenever I'm working with a business owner that I really start our relationship with. And the question is very simple. It's, in this season of life, what are you optimizing for? And I think that's a question to really reflect upon, because oftentimes we just kind of are in the thing that we're doing, right? We're in the empire building season of life, or in the grind season of life, or just putting our head down and just, knuckling down, because we're just living one day at a time, getting what needs to get done. And, as they say, the days go slow, but the years go fast. And I have this photo of my 2 boys when I think probably they were 5 and 3. And they're walking down this path and they're holding hands. They're in boots. We're going through this sort of nature scene. And I took a photo last year, and it was the same, the 2 of them, they weren't holding hands anymore. They're too old for that, but they were side by side. And it was just from behind. You just imagine the silhouette of 2 boys. I had these photos side by side. And the time between those 2 photos felt like a heartbeat. Like I took a breath, I blinked, and that was it. And I think there's so many guys that don't realize that until it's too late. You read the most common regrets of the dying. And this is right at the top of the list. I wish I wouldn't have worked so hard, you know? And I remind myself that, we think we have all the time in the world. I think that's a lie that we've been sold that makes us feel good about ourselves, like especially as our bodies start to break down as we get older. And if you're in the trades, if you're in a physical business, my dad, blue collar guy, was a shipping clerk, loaded boxes on the back of a truck his entire life, worked nights his entire life, didn't go to college, as blue collar as it gets. And I see him now, he's not too dissimilar in age from your father. I mean, his body's broken down. He walks with a limp and he hobbles and his back is hunched over, and it just, from 50 years of just grinding physically. And, I think, to what end? And because my dad worked nights, I didn't see him a ton, right? He was going to bed really early, and just schedules were, he'd start work at the middle of the night. He'd be gone by the time I woke up for school. I'd go to school, have, soccer practice and things like that after school. I'd come back home, eat dinner. He was already in bed because he had to, get up the next day. So I wish I had more time with him. And, I think for those of us that have kids, I think your kids will say the same thing if you're not careful. So I've been super, super mindful of that. I coach both my boys' soccer teams. It's a huge commitment. It's 4 hours a day. No joke. That's not an exaggeration. Like, after this interview, I've got one son that I'm going to his game, and I leave that game and I coach my other son's practice. That's right after that. Get home, I make dinner. I'm the cook in our family, so I make the foods. I try to make a home cooked meal every single night. We grow and raise 80% of the food that we eat as a family. We raise cattle, pigs, chickens, meat birds, laying hens. We've got a pond full of trout. We raise bees. We tap maple syrup. I've planted 500 fruit trees, nut trees, berry bushes. We got a 2-acre production garden. We grow everything from, my boys and I just loaded about 100 pounds of potatoes into sawdust that we'll keep over the winter. We have another 100 pounds in the garden that we'll pull out in a couple of weeks. We do carrots and onions. We do everything, right, that we eat on site. And we do it together as a family. And, they're boys, so they complain, about it. Like, Dad, do we really have to do this? But I just know in my heart of hearts that, they'll look back at these days. They'll remember, I remember when we were a dad and we're brushing the dirt off the potatoes, and it was late at night and putting it into sawdust. And I remember when I couldn't even lift one of those things. And then I needed my dad to help me with it. And, I think, that's what it's all about. So what I'm optimizing for in this season of life is, to paraphrase Thoreau, to suck the marrow out of this season of life, to leave it all in the field, to leave no stone unturned. And this is what it's all about. Like, what's the point, right? What's the point if it's not this? So anyways, a long answer to a short question.
It's a great answer.
That is what I would begin with, is that question. What are you optimizing for? And know with as much clarity and vividness in that answer as I just described to you.
And my curiosity is here. I find myself guilty of feeling as if I'm overcompensating for the shit that my dad didn't do. And I feel like I'm doing a little bit sometimes too much. And that like puts a little bit more pressure and overwhelm of like not fucking up. But it's like almost like in an unhealthy way in that sense. Right. And then I want you to speak to that. And I also want you to speak to the guy who's just like, Ryan, that sounds like a fairy tale, brother. I got to fucking put food on the table. My business would die without me like grinding. It's only going to survive if I grind. That's good for you, but how does it relate to me? If you could click on those two, just to whatever your intuition is calling, and then we can go in another direction. I'd love to hear your response to those two, though.
Yeah, look, I hear you. I'm not here to pontificate and say what I'm doing in my life is right for anybody else. It's just, this is what's working for me in this season of life. I would say making decisions with deep intention and awareness around what it is that you're doing. And know, like, I'm in a season right now that I am super stretched. I'm not going to lie. I'm up at the ass crack of dawn and I'm feeding and watering animals at 5 a.m. I'm getting my kids ready to go to school. I drive my kids to school in the morning. I get back home. I finish my chores. I do about 6 hours of business work, like actually running my business in the middle of the day. I hustle to get done before 3 o'clock so I can come pick up my kids at school, do all the things. I'm stretched. There are days when I'm up at 5 a.m. And there was a day when I was writing that newsletter that you referenced. I had a soccer tournament I was running. I coached 6 games in that tournament. I had my other son who had another game that was 2 hours away, to leave the tournament a little bit early, go to my other son's game, come back home, make dinner, put the kids to bed. And I didn't finish that newsletter until 2 a.m. Now that's not sustainable. That's not forever. So I get grind. Like, trust me, I get it. I ask myself, there's an exercise that I'll take you through this brief exercise. I learned this from a good friend of mine. Her name is Victoria LeBaum, and it's a really brief exercise, but it's very, very powerful. And it goes like this. If you want to know what your life is all about, it's so simple. This is what you do. I invite you to, if you're listening to this right now, if you're not driving or doing something that this is going to be dangerous, I'll invite you to participate. Just close your eyes for just a second. And I want you to imagine that it's the end of your life and you're in a hospital bed. And the doctor said, this is it. It's the end. You have an opportunity to say goodbye to all your loved ones. And so one by one, the loved ones in your life come into the room and you say goodbye. As they walk out the room, the next one, until there's one last person. And this last person is a little person. It could be your kid, it could be a grandkid, maybe a great-grandkid. And as this little person, this young child, steps up to your bed and gives you one last hug, you whisper in their ear one last piece of wisdom for how to live a good life. What are those words? Whatever words came to mind, whatever words immediately showed up, without overthinking it, without saying that was wrong or that was right, that's your through line. That's what your life is all about. That's what's most important to you personally. Now, when I went through this exercise, it was very clear. It was leave it all on the field, but most importantly, live and love fully. That's it. And so for me, a full life is all the things. Yes, it's the struggle. It's the white knuckling through the tough times. But it's doing it from a place of gratitude. So there are days when I'm so exhausted, so stretched. And I remind myself, I am so lucky that I get to work hard, that I've got something in my life that I love so much, that I'm doing these things for. And I think that's the thing to remember, is that, we get to do it. It's not that we got to do it, right? It's like we get to do it. We don't got to do it. And that simple reframe just transforms the season of grind. And that's a fairy tale for you. That's just a freaking perspective, man. Like, you're living in your fairy tale right now. I like to remind myself, we take personal responsibility when I'm feeling a sense of victimhood crop up, or I'm bitching about something that I'm doing in the moment. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, why am I doing this right now? I remind myself, this moment in time is the sum total of every decision that I've made in my life that's brought me to this moment. And that's a little bit like a kick in the nuts to yourself. And at the same time, it's liberating, because it reminds you that you've got the personal power within you to change, to make changes. And it's got to be you. No one else. There's no one that's going to come and rescue you. There's no one that's going to fly in from outer space and say, you know what, I got you. You've got to do that. Now, that sucks in the moment where you're like, all right, there's a lot on my shoulders. But at the same time, it offers you a tremendous amount of personal power, because it means that you get to shape what tomorrow is going to look like. So I have these rituals that I go through in these moments, because we all go through them, right? Dark times. I've had times where, just this morning, and I would tears on this interview. My younger son is looking at possibly going to a new school, and I'm sitting there in the car ride home, dropping him off at the school, and I'm in tears, and I'm thinking to myself, am I making the right decision? Is this the right thing? Is this the right move for him? Am I pulling him out of the school that he's thinking about, that he's in right now, and I'm pulling him from his friends and everything that he's become attached to and putting him in this new school. Is this the right move? I don't know. But one of the things that I've learned, and I'll end this answer with this, is I've learned to listen to the contrarian voice inside my heart. And there's a business lesson within that. And that is my first book, Ask, was all about how to ask your market what they want, how to figure out what your market wants so you can give it to them, how to optimize your messaging, your marketing. And it was all about how to tap into the natural consumer language of your market so you can understand what's driving people at an emotional level so that you can connect with them in what it is that you sell, whether you are a plumber or an HVAC contractor, whatever it may be, whatever your business is, forming an actual connection with your audience. But what the book failed to explore was how to listen to the most important voice of them all. And that's the voice right here. It's not this voice. It's not the one in your head where you intellectualize and rationalize what it is that you're saying. It's when you quiet your mind and you quiet the chatter and you listen to your heart and what feels like the right thing to do, the thing you know you need to do, the thing that's scary to do, the thing that might mean giving up good in order to go after great. Listening to the contrarian voice of your heart.
Damn. What an awesome response. And I'm glad I asked the curiosity question. I put mine in the chat. If anybody's here with us live, I put what I said to that little person was learn, help, and laugh. And that's something I was fresh because I've been having that conversation with my 5-year-old before I drop him off at school to guide him to, if he does those 3 things each day, it's going to be a full day. If he learns something and he helps somebody and laughs and has a good moment, then it's a good day. It's a full day. And that was what came through. What a great exercise, and thank you for bringing that into the space. And I beg the listener to not only do the exercise, but also think about your priorities right now of like where you are at in the season of life that you're in, and just I got to lead to believe that if you take some of what Ryan is talking about here and just do an audit of like where your attention is at and where maybe there's some opportunities to just buy back some time and refocus your priorities a little bit, there's opportunity. There's opportunity. We all have 168 hours and we all have been gifted something. Let's use it. And I love this, man. Thank you so much, Ryan. Anything else on this piece before I'd like to hear your thoughts on, AI, on how what you laid out in the email that I really enjoyed reading, and how someone in the trades or anyone in business might be able to continue establishing this human connection and being real with humans while leveraging AI. I know Jeff Woods was on the podcast. We talked a little bit about that, but I'd like to hear your take on it. And then we're like already gunning through this interview. I'm like, shit, I got like 17 questions. I got to pick and choose which ones.
I'll let you take back control.
I would love to get tactical. Like I do have tactical at some point, maybe if it's only like 6 or 7 minutes, but like I actually want your tactical thoughts on a couple of things. Yeah. But let's stay with where the energy's at right now, though.
I think this is a good perhaps segue, and that is everything that hopefully you felt in the first part of this conversation represents in many ways simultaneously what AI cannot do, and at the same time what the world is craving. What the world is craving right now is real. So the question I've been spending a lot of time thinking about is, in a world of artificial everything, from the food that we eat to the content we consume, what if in business, real is the only advantage left? What do I mean by that is technology is no longer a moat. You can vibe code websites in a matter of minutes just by saying, hey, I like this website over here, using a tool online to basically replicate that entire piece. And in a matter of seconds, you have the same thing. Technology, by and large, is no longer a moat. What is a moat is often the unscalable, the things that your competition is not willing to do. Building trust in a world where the default state of the world right now is distrust. In a world that's filled with deepfake technology where we get voice messages and we wonder, is this even a human being that's calling me right now? Or the human being that they're pretending to be, is this really them? We live in a default state of distrust. The world has never been more distrustful. This is measurable by the Edelman Trust Barometer that's been measuring trust for the last 25 years. We're in the lowest state of trust in the history of the world. Now, what do we need to do to combat that? Well, we need three things. Injecting three things into what it is that you do. And I've written about this in my newsletter. I write about this in my next book. It's three ingredients. People need to see your heart, your humor, and your humanity. And that has to come from you. So I think in the question about AI, and this will segue into something more tactical, is, okay, AI is here, and AI is a huge topic. Very big topic, and we can attack it in a number of different ways. But the question as business owners that we should be asking ourselves is, where should I be injecting AI into my business? And where should I not inject AI into my business? And I think a big mistake that a lot of people have made over the last 24 months is they've abdicated their voice to AI. Meaning, instead of actually putting their own thoughts, their own ideas that come from their head and from their heart out in the world so people can actually connect with you as the voice piece of your brand, they're outsourcing that to AI and saying, do this for me. And if there's ever something to not give up in the history of political struggle, in the history of revolution, the thing that you don't want to give up is your voice. It's the last thing that you have. Why would you abdicate that to some robot that's going to speak for you? Now you're going to let someone do the talking for you? I mean, are you even a man if you're going to let other people do the talking for you? Like, question that. And yet there's been this race to do this. And it's a Pandora's box that once it's open, it's very difficult to close. Because as soon as you start going down that path, the question mark that every customer, every prospect is going to wonder is, am I really dealing with the guy, or is just this some AI robot that's representing him and his voice or her voice in the market? So customer interfacing, I think that is the biggest mistake. The voice that you're putting out there in the world, that is the biggest mistake. Instead, we should be thinking about, how do we use AI to take away the drudgery, the back office work, the stuff that nobody sees? That's the type of work that AI is very well equipped to handle, and to eliminate the mundane tasks, the mundanity of your life and your business, so you have more time for not just with your kids, like we've been talking about in the first part of this conversation, and your family, but to have more time interfacing with your customers, to build that connection, to build that trust. Because at the end of the day, that is the last moat that we have in business, in an age of AI where technology is no longer a competitive moat. So hopefully that, Mike, maybe serves as a segue into the second part of our conversation to make this a little bit more tactical and practical around how we can apply some of this in our businesses.
Oh, so many questions. Choose which one makes the most sense, right? Because it's tough. Like, I don't necessarily want to push back, but I also know, like, we do want to have our voice, and we do want to make sure that we're speaking truth to the audience. And we also need to be as efficient as possible, because there's the marketing engine, there's the sales engine, there's the fulfillment engine. And then ideally the fulfillment engine brings more clients into the top of the funnel with referrals. And we almost, if our voice is the only thing that we have that we don't want to delegate to AI, and we want to do it intentionally and intelligently without a cost, I feel like maybe I'm sure there's a question in there, but it's like, where might I be able to do it in the most effective way in the marketing, sales, and fulfillment side without losing the edge? I mean, it seems like there's an unspoken, like, great, that sounds really like a good theory and a good idea, but where's the best place to start?
There's three parts to the model, right? Three parts to the model. This is something that I spent the better part of the last 2.5 years building, refining, and then executing it for myself. Because you've already heard, I'm not sitting around creating content all day. That's not my life. I've got a full life like we all do. I've got a 140-acre farm that I manage. I got 2 boys, coaching 2 teams, doing all the things, cooking food from scratch, and still trying to find time to run a business at the same time. So the 3 ingredients. Number 1, you need to have category of 1 positioning. And this has to come from a place of what you believe to be true, that's unique, that's different from anybody else in your space. And I have some exercises and prompts that we can even kind of think about and talk about here. And that's the first ingredient that's absolutely necessary for you to stand out in your marketplace. Otherwise, you're just going to be beigeified like everybody else, and you're going to sound like every other plumber, every other HVAC guy. You're going to sound like every other electrician that's out there in the market. You're going to be non-discernible from anybody else. You're just going to sound like everybody else because you're doing what everybody else is doing. So number one, you need category of one positioning so that you are the clear and obvious choice. Number two, you need a way to create a single source of truth piece of content. Ideally, this is on a weekly basis. And the reason for that is when people are building a relationship, a connection, there are two timelines on which people build habits. They either build habits on a weekly basis or on a daily basis, right? You think about it, you wake up every morning, you get up, you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth. That's a daily habit. It's part of your daily routine. Then you've got weekly routines, right? If you're a football guy, you might watch Monday Night Football every Monday night. Like that's a thing that you do once a week. Where we get in trouble is when we try to do something and have a relationship with our audience that is different from one of those two timelines, either a daily touch point or a weekly touch point. Daily is virtually impossible unless you are a full-time content creator as your job. If you're running an actual business, if you're running an HVAC contracting business, for example, trying to do something every single day is just not reasonable. So it's not practical, and it's not practical for someone like myself. So that leaves us with a weekly habit where you are creating a single source of truth piece of content. Now, this has to come from you. It cannot be just AI, give me something to say to put out there to my market. It has to come from you. Every voice has a unique energy signature. Like you can feel that I'm a real human being with a real beating heart. And people want to connect with you as a real human being with a real beating heart. And if you just go to ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or Gemini or whatever your generative AI tool of choice is, and you say, hey, can you just write me an email newsletter I can just pump out and send to my market, and it doesn't have your unique energy signature, your unique fingerprint, then it's just going to get lost in the sea of noise. It's going to sound like everything else. You have to cut through. Single source of truth piece of content is thing number two. The way I do it is every single week, I write a weekly email newsletter. That's it. It's the only thing that I create. I write one email a week. From there, you need ingredient number three, which is a strategic content ecosystem. Strategic content ecosystem is where you can take that one piece of content that you've created that gives you ultimate leverage, and now you can disseminate it in all these different ways to reach your audience from a discovery standpoint on all the places that they're spending time on right now. Now, depending on your business, that might be Facebook, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Instagram, it might be YouTube, it might be on Google's homepage. These are the places that people are already spending time online. So that way, when they discover you, their first impression, remember, we only got one chance at a first impression. Their first impression of you is not some, no disrespect to anybody doing this, I'm just going to call it how it is because I'm a brutal bastard in the pursuit of truth and profit. Some Hey Gen 11 Labs a digital avatar of you that looks and feels like it's synthetic. Do you really want that to be the first impression someone has with you and your brand? And that the only time they actually get to meet you is when they're in the fulfillment process and you're actually on site meeting them at that point? You're never going to get to that point because you're going to look and sound like everybody else. You got to have a real beating heart you got to be a real human being with a real beating heart, and that has to be in that first impression. So 3 ingredients. You need number 1, category of one positioning, clear and obvious choice. Number 2, a way to create a single source of truth piece of content from which that one piece of content gets repurposed and reshaped in all these different ways to create a strategic content ecosystem. So that way, when people look for your solution online, they find you and they say, this guy sounds different. This guy tastes different. You want it to be the difference between the analogy that I've used is most of the world is selling the watered down orange juice that you get at a fountain soda machine. When you push the button, it goes into your glass. But what the world is craving is the freshly squeezed Sunday brunch variety. You know the kind I'm talking about. You can taste it. The pulp is there. You could tell that that thing was squeezed in the kitchen minutes before you drink. It's still warm from the oranges that were just plucked off the tree. That's what the world is craving. And once they taste that, they can never go back to the watered down stuff from a can. But that's what the rest of the world is doing right now. So how do you stand out? You find a way to get your version of the freshly squeezed orange juice into people's hands and into their mouths. And once they taste it, they'll never want to go back.
So to spit it back to you, just make sure we got this. If it's a landscape lighting company, we have like, I don't know, 8 to 10 that we're working with right now as an example. Category of one positioning is there, could it be their origin story, the quality of work, their customer service, the training that they provide their technicians, the materials that they use? Is it just spit it back to me if I'm missing this. So the category of one, something like that, that's a differentiator that's unique to us potentially. And I could park there and then, yeah, go ahead.
3 ingredients for category of one. First ingredient that you need is you need to present a confluence of forces that have happened in the world that have changed the game. Now, this is true in every industry, right? There's always some form of new external force, whether it's a new technology, it could be a new political regime, it could be a new tax credit scheme that's showed up. It could be changes in the environment if you're a landscaper. Like, for example, we're going through an epic 40-year drought right now in where we are in Vermont. And as a result, we're having our foliage season, which Vermont is very famous for, the fall foliage of New England, where I'm taking photos of my site. And I'm looking, I'm saying, this feels like we're getting some leaf change and happening really early right now. What's going on? And I'm looking at pictures that I took around this time last year. My entire 100 acres is green. This year, we're almost in stick season, and we're about 2.5 weeks ahead of schedule. Now, that's a function of the stress that our natural environment is under right now because of this 40-year drought that we're experiencing. That's an example of an external force that's presented a change in circumstances. So ingredient number one, you need the confluence, ideally of 3 forces that have changed the game. So a landscaper, you might say something like, look, the world has changed. We're in a period of time right now where we're experiencing a form of global weirding. It's not necessarily global warming, it's global weirding. Like, for example, in our zone, we're in the middle of a 40-year drought. We had the rainiest spring that we've had on record, 6 weekends in a row of nonstop rain, inches of rain every single weekend. I thought, we're never going to have a weekend that's dry. Once that 6 weeks stopped, we haven't gotten rain in like 60 days. That's an example of global warming. That's an external force that you can speak to that says the game has changed. Now, if you're looking to hire a landscaper, you need someone who's aware of these changes, right? Immediately, you're not just a run-of-the-mill commoditized landscaper. You're someone who knows that there's a change that's happening in the world right now. So me as a homeowner, if I'm looking to hire a landscaper, I'm thinking to myself, so what does that mean? Well, it means that the way that you want to be thinking about the landscape in your home has changed. How you think about water management, water capture, what types of species are going to thrive in your zone. So that way, if you're investing time and money in your landscaping right now, as the USDA hardiness zone in your site changes from 5A to 4B or vice versa, you're putting a spectrum of species on your property that's going to survive this change in the environment. Now, all of a sudden, you're talking to me in a way where I'm thinking, all right, this guy's different. These guys know what they're talking about. So that's the first thing, the confluence of forces happening in the world that's changed the game. That's number one. Number two, what is your contrarian or counterintuitive or unconventional approach that makes you different from everybody else? This is where you absolutely need to be doing something differently. You can't do things the way that everybody else does them. Now, a prompting on how to figure out what this might be could be, what is it about your industry that pisses you off? What is it that your competitors do that drives you crazy? Another way to think about it, if someone were to see you in action, let's just take the landscaping example. If someone were to see you in action on site at a client's place of residence, a colleague of yours, and they were watching you, at what point in time would they ask you, why do you do it like that? If you're a plumber, same thing. Why are you using that tool or that methodology or that technique? So these are all clues to help you identify what is your contrarian, unconventional, or unique approach that sets you up from everybody else. That's ingredient number two. And then ingredient number three is the one that you pointed to, which is your unique origin story. What is it that brought you into your business? It's what I call your missionary story over your mercenary story. So there's a million ways to make $1 million. Why did you get into the business that you're in right now? What is it that makes your heart beat about landscaping or about plumbing? What is it? Is it a sense of duty to your father because you took over your dad's business? Is it a long line of plumbers in your extended family that you feel like you're carrying the torch? What is it that gives you the sense of pride? What is your mission behind it? That this is not just a job, but you're doing this because there's something inside of you that lights you up. So you combine those three things together, the confluence of forces, the game has changed. And because the game has changed, we've changed the way we do things. There's a sense of global weirding. So as a result, we've changed the way that we approach this. And by the way, this is my passion. This is why I do what I do, because it lights me up. And here's a little bit about my story that you may not have known. That sets you up as a category of one. That makes you not just another landscaper, not just another plumber, but now you are the guy. You are the clear and obvious choice. So that's the first thing. Then from there, we go to single source of truth, which is where you're talking about all of these things that I just mentioned. You're talking about the fact that, hey, did you know that Vermont hasn't gotten this little rain in over 40 years? Well, here's how this is showing up. We're seeing stress in it was the worst apple crop that we have on memory. It's, the blueberries didn't even fruit this year on many sites because we've had so little water. Like, this is where you get to talk about these things, where people are nodding their heads and saying, yeah, I've seen this too. Yeah, tell me about it, right? And then from there, you've got that strategic content ecosystem that this is showing up in all the places that matter for your market. So hopefully that brings it a little bit from sort of theory, philosophy to earth and an actual practical application of what this can look like.
Yes. Yeah, that was great. And I was typing some things in the chat for anybody that's here live, but I really love what you're saying. It's like how you think about it, what you do different. What's your unconventional approach? Why do you choose to do it that way versus another way? What's your unique origin story is like kind of the last piece, but I really love some of what you just shared, man. I'm going to go back and listen to that. That was excellent. Damn, I know we only have like coming towards the end here. Like
I'll let you go rapid fire because otherwise I'll keep it long. So
I know we have fellow front row dad, a brother of mine in my band. We're in a band together. I at least want to bring his question into space. Matt asked, he's curious about tactics and advice when it comes to best practices for that back of office work that's most suitable for AI. So are there some low-hanging fruit that maybe is a little bit easier for AI practices to implement, if you have any that you could rapid fire on?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, I would say, ask yourself where you're spending your time right now on back office work. What is the work that you're doing that you are repeating over and over again every single week? It's going to be different for every single business. Like, for example, one of the things that we've built in our business is we have a repeatable content process. So I write a weekly email newsletter that gets repurposed in all these different ways. We take that weekly email newsletter, it gets repurposed onto Substack as a LinkedIn email newsletter on medium.com. And then from there, we transform that into a carousel. So a series of sort of images that shows up on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn once again. I then read the newsletter, looking into camera as you see me right now. That becomes a long form video that gets repurposed onto YouTube, short form videos that are shared on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, across the internet. So I have one piece of content that I write, and that gets disseminated into something like 30 different forms of content all over the internet. It's transformed into a podcast, like this conversation right here, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of tasks in there that we use, in some cases, agentic AI, so using AI agents to repeat some of these processes. So there are tools that you can use to do this. There's a tool called Lindy. There's a more advanced tool called N8N where you can set this up. ChatGPT has some agentic capabilities. So these are the types of things that we look at as a way to use AI to just repeat. So I don't have an army of workers in an office somewhere doing all this repeatable work that shows up every single week, do the same thing, click the same buttons. That's where AI can really, really, really shine. On the front of the business, I use AI in a big way as a thought partner, as a research partner. So if I want to write something, it's a bit meta that we're talking about this. There was an article that a study that OpenAI just released, where basically OpenAI analyzed, and I'm not sure if this is the newsletter issue that you're talking about.
Yes.
OpenAI looked at basically 1.5 million interactions with ChatGPT, and it analyzed the nature of these interactions and distilled things into basically 7 different subcategories, 7 different major subcategories of interactions that people are having with at least a generative AI. And, the things like personal editing and writing makes up about 18%. So these are people saying, I need to send an email to my parents of my, kids on my soccer team. I want to say this, this, and this. Can you just write the email for me? Boom. Okay, done. Or, hey, this is the email that I've written. Can you help me, zhuzh it up a little bit, make it sound a little bit more, clean up the issues that I have, make it more clear. Another area is tutoring and teaching. So people are using AI to teach them stuff. And this is kids doing it, but it's also adults. It's about 10% of what's showing up. Health, fitness, and beauty and self-care. It's about 6%. So people are asking questions about their health. Hey, I've got this bump on my knuckle right now. Like, here's a photo of it. What do you think is it? Is it did I, and we just see, we can see someone's.
No, it's my screen. I'm just sharing the
okay,
email.
good.
This is the email that you sent that I was referring to. So anybody who's watching on YouTube, please go subscribe to Ryan's newsletter because it's really awesome. But this is the visual. I just wanted to. This is what you're referencing, right?
I see your desktop with a bunch of icons on it.
Oh, geez, my bad. I clicked the wrong one. Rookie move. This is
yes, exactly. Yeah. So if you zoom in on that, that's a screenshot from OpenAI's study where basically they verticalized these sort of 7 subcategories, and within each of these 7 subcategories, there you can further subcategorize where these interactions are taking place. And I think that's instructive for a few different reasons. One, it's helpful to know maybe how other people are using AI, and it can inform you how you may want to use AI. But like, for example, personal writing and editing, the fact that people are using AI so much to do their writing for themselves, this is a classic zig when they zag opportunity, right? It's like when you go to the grocery store and everybody goes to the line on the right, do you follow everybody else like a sheep? Or do you decide to go to the line where nobody's at? Well, that's what you want to do. So if the whole world right now is using AI to write their stuff for them, do you really think that stuff's going to sound that dissimilar from one another? Or is it all going to kind of start sounding the same? Well, the zig when they zag move there is to write your stuff yourself, as an example. Another example that shows up is on, I'm trying to think one that's relevant to our audience here today. It could be on the how to advice, wedge, which is about 8.5% of people are asking ChatGPT questions around how to advice. So this could be, how to fix a toilet, or, how do I repair the trap at the bottom of my sink in the bathroom is leaking right now. What do I need to do? Well, those are opportunities to create content around that, if that's your area, and offer yourself up as a service that fixes that. Clearly, almost 10% of all ChatGPT interactions right now are questions around that. So, people are trying to DIY their way through life. So I think that those are a few things, Mike, that come to mind around that study, how to think about it. In my newsletter, there's a link to the whole study if you want to actually dive in more deeply.
Dude, it's awesome. Right. I mean, super valuable. And here's the meta lesson for anybody listening is Ryan took at 2, submitted this at 2 a.m, this one piece of content, but it's a high value piece of content that lands in the inbox. Now, I will be transparent. There's a lot of emails that I have from Ryan that I don't open. Which is okay. But because he has his consistent process that, this is him in my inbox, and I transparently, there's some that I don't open. There's some that I just happen to be opening. And I happen to open this one that was super inspiring to me. But because he has consistency, I know it's going to be predictable. It's going to come in my inbox. And then if I want to go further, I go on his social media, and I could even poke around his website. I love that. But I also love that you said that one piece of content goes into like 30 different directions. So even if it's Joe the plumber, you still want to use this as a part of your brand ethos, but it's all coming from your heart, your voice, your thoughts, your lived experiences. And I really love that sentiment. So if anybody's listening to this, taking that one takeaway, content creation is not something to delegate to AI. The distribution of the content, breaking down the content into smaller bite-sized chunks. Maybe we could use technology or team for those, but the actual creation of it needs to really live well in you as the owner, is what I'm gathering from this.
That's a great way to put it. The creation itself should come from you. The distribution, the syndication, the repurposing, that's where AI, I mean, just at the highest level, to keep it, really, really simple, the highest level, that's where AI really, really shines. And your point about, not reading every issue of a weekly newsletter, that's expected. Your people and your audience aren't going to read every single word that you write. You want to be there in front of them when the moment shows up. So that way, when they have the plumbing issue that they need someone, they got to call someone, you're the guy they're calling. When they decide, you know what, the landscaper that they're using right now has kind of flaked out on them and hasn't done a great job, you want your email to show up that week. And that's why you've got to show up consistently. It's got to be at that time where the only reason why people buy anything is because of triggers. That's it. That's why people buy. It all is because of a trigger. And whatever it is that you sell, there are a finite number of triggers that show up that cause someone to buy. In the landscaping business, I have to imagine it's you move to a new house, you need a landscaper, so you reach out to your neighbors, you call around, you're looking for recommendations. What signs do you see? What trucks do you see? And that's one trigger. Another trigger is you're DIYing it and you're saying, I can't cut my own lawn anymore. I've got too much stuff going on in my life. I've got to hire someone to do this. Trigger number 3 is you got someone who's doing the job right now, but you're not happy with the work, right? So you want to be present when these things happen, or you got a spring cleanup job that needs to be done, or you got a tree that fell that needs to be taken care of. Like you could make a list of all the different triggers why someone buys, and you want to be in front of them when that trigger happens so that when the tree falls, your email lands in their inbox and it's almost like divine intervention where it's like, these are the guys I'm going to call. That's perfect timing. It just worked out that way. And you want to be there for every possible trigger, for every possible person in your market so that you are the clear and obvious choice. And again, with messaging that stands out, that doesn't sound like everybody else, it's something that is memorable. Like I'm hoping what you'll remember from this interview, this conversation here today, even though Mike and I decided to coordinate on our green shirts here, and for anyone watching the video on this and be matching, is the story of the farm. Like I want to sear in your brain a few memories of, you on that deathbed saying goodbye to that little person and imparting that wisdom and identifying your through line. Answering that question, what are you optimizing for in this season of life? And if you've got kids or grandkids, imagining your kiddos, the silhouette of them from behind at whatever age they were not that long ago, and the window that is open at this moment in time that's not going to be open forever. Those are images that I hope you take away from this conversation that's different. It's not just the same conversation that you've heard a million times. It's something that's different that sticks with you. So when you're driving or taking a shower or at the gym or out cutting the lawn or doing whatever, you're thinking about this and you're reflecting on it. You want your content to have that same type of impact on your audience.
Damn, Ryan. Damn. I wish this was like a Joe Rogan type of show where we just go for hours. But here's the thing. I watched you deliver a workshop for Quiz Funnels that was like, went out to the freaking masses. Like, I don't even know how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people watched that thing that whole giant Quiz Funnels thing you did a couple years ago that was massive. And now you're hosting these like intimate in-person retreats at your home that people are spending real connection with you. And for me to witness from the sidelines, for you to like influence millions of people in the masses on a workshop to hosting these intimate retreats at your home and entering them into your space. I just am like just super inspired and really grateful for you just being able to like speak to our group and to me and to these hearts. And I know we didn't get a chance to go in every direction that I wanted to go today, but is there anything that didn't get said today that you want to make sure we click on before we ask every guest the final question?
Yeah, well, look, I'll say, let's do part 2. Like, let's find a time. We'll do a part 2. I'm sure we can go deeper into so much of this. And the last thing that I'll say before, maybe answering the final question to that point, what's the reason for making this shift? Well, I think part of my, we call it a midlife awakening that I went through after the failed sale of my business. And by the way, the punchline to that story is 2 years after moving onto our farm, I did sell my company. And it came in the most unexpected way, in the most unexpected places. I reached out to my single biggest competitor. I had a moment of inspiration when I was out in the fields and I saw the purple aster and the yellow goldenrod, which are technically competitors in nature. And I saw something that I'd read about in a book that I'd read about how these two flowers, the purple aster and yellow goldenrod, will grow together in nature because that combination of colors causes honeybees to want to pollinate those flowers. So they actually collaborate instead of compete. And I saw this and I had a flash of inspiration. I thought to myself, what if I would reach out to Daniel? CEO of the company was my number one competitor. And on a whim, I rushed home. I reached out to a mutual colleague. I said, hey, can you connect us? Connect to them, left them a voice message. I said, I've got a crazy idea. Are you open to having a chat? We had a chat. 3 months later, I'd sold my company. So I'll say this, the realization and the reason for the shift is a key observation that I write about in my forthcoming book, which is titled The Return to Real. And it's this, the best things in life don't scale. And I think in business, we have this obsession about everything's got to scale. The question that naturally shows up whenever you talk about, writing an email every single week, but how do you scale that? Well, how do you scale a hug with your 5-year-old daughter? You don't. It's not the right question. It's how do you savor that moment? The best things in life don't scale. So the question to be asking yourself in your life and in your business, what are the unscalable ingredients that you're going to keep in your business that help you create that category of one, that differentiate you, that make you different from everybody else?
Ryan, we ask every guest the same question. What does it mean to you to be better than rich?
Better than rich to me means to be content with whatever shows up. I try to instill in my boys to seek awe and wonder in the ordinary and mundane. When you can go outside and you can look at a butterfly on the milkweed and feel just so blessed and full, all of a sudden you realize you don't need a whole lot to live a really full and meaningful life. So better than rich is a life where you're content and you seek awe and wonder in the ordinary and everyday.
Well, I've never seen a milkweed before, but I'm hoping to one day in life. Ryan, there's a chance I'll be in Vermont to go skiing in Killington at some point. I might hit you up if I'm
Hit me up. It's not too far from where we're at. Love to.
That would be amazing to see my first milkweed. Gosh, thank you so much. If people want to stay in touch with you, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, so best place I think to go from here is, as we've talked about a few times, I write a weekly email newsletter called the Digital Contrarian, which you can get access to at thedigitalcontrarian.com. And every single week I write real, raw observations, lessons learned, mistakes made around business, the intersection of AI, and really a lot of the conversation that we've had here today. And I don't use AI to write that newsletter. It comes from my brain, it comes from my heart, it comes from these two kind of dirt under the fingernail hands that you see right here from this digital technologist turned regenerative farmer. So I invite you to join me there and join the conversation. thedigitalcontrarian.com.
thedigitalcontrarian.com. Ryan Levesque, thank you so much. And I will take you up on the part 2 at some point. It only took 2 years to make this one happen. So hopefully we
won't let it be 2 years before the next one, for sure.
Thanks so much, brother. And everyone that's here live, thank you for being here. Matt, thanks for the question. And everyone who's tuning into the recording and the replay, you could join us live for all our future recordings for season 4. And you could join us. You could just email me, mike@betterthanrich.com, if you're not on our newsletter, where we tell you about the shows that are up and coming. Thank you again for listening. We can't have the show without you. And as always, on the Better Than Rich show, leave today better than you found it. Till next time. Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at betterthan_rich and join our Facebook group at the Better Than Rich Show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, leave today better than you found it.